My daughter's husband thought I was just an old fool who didn't understand anything. Robert used to sneak into my room when he thought I was asleep, moving through my house like a thief in the night, looking for something valuable. But that afternoon, when he opened my jewelry box to steal my diamond wedding ring, his face first turned white as chalk, and then yellow like old parchment. What he saw there changed his life forever. And me. I just smiled in the darkness of my pretended sleep. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The fork had frozen halfway to my mouth 3 weeks earlier when Robert's voice cut through our peaceful Sunday dinner. So Margaret, that jewelry collection of yours, do you keep it all in that antique box upstairs? Lisa nearly choked on her wine. Robert, what kind of question is that? But Robert's eyes stayed fixed on mine, waiting. There was something predatory in his expression that made my chest tighten. I set down my fork carefully, buying time to study his face, that handsome, charming face that had swept my daughter off her feet. Just curious about security, he continued, that practiced smile spreading across his lips. There's been a lot of break-ins in the neighborhood lately. Maybe you should consider a safe. Lisa laughed nervously. Mom's lived here 40 years without any problems. Haven't you, Mom? I nodded slowly, but I was watching Robert's hands. The way his fingers drummed against the table. The way his wedding ring, my daughter's ring on his finger, caught the light as he fidgeted. Something about his manner reminded me of the restless boys I used to teach, the ones who were planning mischief the moment my back was turned. Of course, you're right, Robert said, but his eyes lingered on me a moment too long. I just worry about you, Margaret. Living alone with all those valuable things. That night, I lay awake thinking about his words. Valuable things. He wasn't wrong. Harold had been generous over our 4 to 7 years of marriage, and I'd inherited pieces from my mother and grandmother as well. But it wasn't Robert's concern for my safety that kept me staring at the ceiling until dawn. It was the hunger I'd seen in his eyes when he'd asked about the jewelry box. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I moved my real jewelry, including Harold's grandmother's diamond wedding ring, into the small safe Harold had installed behind the family photo in our bedroom closet. But in the mahogany jewelry box on my dresser, the one Robert kept eyeing whenever he visited, I placed something else entirely. An old manila envelope. Yellowed newspaper clippings. Photographs. A letter written in my careful teacher's handwriting, dated 15 years ago. Evidence I'd kept of a crime that had destroyed 2 of my dearest friends. Evidence I'd never imagined would become relevant to my own life until I saw Robert's face that first time Lisa brought him home. It had taken me weeks to remember where I'd seen those dark eyes before, that calculating smile. But when the memory finally surfaced, it hit me like a physical blow. Robert Henley. The name in the police reports. The face in the newspaper photo. The man who had swindled the Weatherbys out of their life savings with promises of investment returns that never came. My friends Martha and George Weatherby had died within months of each other, their hearts broken along with their bank account. I'd kept every piece of evidence from their case, hoping someday justice would find Robert Henley. I just never imagined justice would walk into my living room holding my daughter's hand. So I waited. And I watched. And when Robert finally made his move that quiet Tuesday afternoon, thinking I was napping in my chair, I was ready. The jewelry box lid opened with its familiar melody, and I watched through my barely closed eyelids as his confident expression crumbled. His hands shook as he lifted the envelope, and I saw the exact moment recognition hit him. The newspaper clipping with his younger face staring back at him. The police report with his name. The letter I'd written to the district attorney, describing what Robert Henley had done to 2 innocent people who'd trusted him with their golden years. He stood there for a full minute, paralyzed, the evidence of his past crimes trembling in his hands. And that's when I opened my eyes fully and spoke into the afternoon silence. Find what you were looking for, Robert. He spun around so fast he nearly dropped the envelope. The color that had drained from his face came rushing back in a flood of red embarrassment and panic. For a moment, he looked exactly like the teenage boys I used to catch cheating on tests, caught red-handed with no way to run. Margaret, I was just. He fumbled with the papers, trying to shove them back into the jewelry box, but his hands were shaking too badly. I heard a noise, thought maybe someone had broken in. I was checking to make sure your valuables were safe. I stood slowly from my chair, every movement deliberate. At 7 to 5, I'd learned that sometimes stillness held more power than haste. A noise. From inside a closed jewelry box. His lies crumbled before he could even form them. I walked toward him, and he actually took a step back. Good. He should be afraid. You recognized yourself in those photos, didn't you, Robert? Or should I call you Bobby? That's what the Weatherbys called you when you were stealing their retirement money. The last of his color vanished. You don't understand. Oh, but I do. I reached out and took the envelope from his nerveless fingers. Martha Weatherby was my closest friend for 30 years. She and George trusted you with everything they had. Do you remember what you told them when their checks stopped coming? When they called asking where their money had gone? Robert's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You told them there had been market fluctuations. Temporary setbacks. You said their money was safe, just tied up for a few more months. My voice stayed calm, but inside, the old fury was rising like a tide. They died waiting for those few months to pass, Robert. Martha had a heart attack in the grocery store when she realized she couldn't afford her medication. George followed 6 weeks later, died of grief and shame. That was different, he whispered. That was years ago. I was young. I made mistakes. Mistakes? I held up the newspaper clipping. This says you stole $460,000 from elderly clients. Plural. How many others were there, Robert? How many other Martha and Georges? He ran his hands through his hair, and for the first time since I'd met him, the charming mask completely slipped away. Underneath was something desperate and hollow. You don't know what it was like. I was in debt, real debt. Bad people were after me. I was going to pay it all back. I swear I was. But you never did. I couldn't. By the time I had the money, they were dead. The word hung in the air between us like a blade. Robert stared at me, and I saw the exact moment he realized his life was about to fall apart all over again. What do you want? He asked quietly. I smiled then, and it wasn't a kind smile. I want to know why you married my daughter. Was this always the plan? Get close to the family, map out the valuables, earn our trust before you cleaned us out. No. His voice cracked. I love Lisa. I really do love her. Love. I tasted the word like something bitter. You love her money, you mean. Her inheritance. This house and everything in it. He started to protest, but I held up a hand. The missing silver spoon from the dining set. The way you asked about my safe. Your sudden interest in the neighborhood crime rates. I ticked off each point on my fingers. Did you think I was too old to notice? Too senile to remember faces? Robert sank down onto the edge of my bed, his head in his hands. What are you going to do? I walked to my window and looked out at the garden Harold and I had planted together 40 years ago. The roses were blooming, despite my age, despite my arthritis, despite everything I'd lost. Some things endured. That depends, I said, not turning around, on what you're going to do. Behind me, I heard him take a shaky breath. Please, Margaret. Don't tell Lisa. Not yet. Give me a chance to. To what? I turned back to face him. Disappear in the night. Take whatever you can carry and leave my daughter to wake up wondering what she did wrong. No, I would never. He stopped himself, perhaps realizing how hollow his protest sounded. I need time to figure out how to tell her. She'll never forgive me. She shouldn't forgive you. The words hit him like a slap. He flinched, then looked up at me with something that might have been genuine remorse. Or might have been fear. I'd learned long ago that the two could look remarkably similar. You're right, he said quietly. I know you're right. But Lisa, she's the only good thing that's happened to me in 15 years. I can't lose her. You should have thought of that before you came creeping around my bedroom looking for things to steal. I wasn't going to steal anything today, he said, and for once, his voice held a note of honesty. I was just looking, trying to figure out what was worth what, in case. In case what? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. I owe money again. Different people this time, but just as bad. Maybe worse. He looked up at me with hollow eyes. I thought maybe I could borrow against some of your pieces. Just temporarily. Pay back what I owe and then replace everything before anyone noticed. The audacity of it took my breath away. Borrow against my jewelry? Without telling me. I know how it sounds. It sounds like you were planning to steal from us. Again. I felt the familiar teacher's authority creeping into my voice. How much do you owe, Robert? 80,000. I whistled low. Even after 40 years of retirement, that number stung. Gambling. He nodded miserably. Started small. Just online poker to pass the time when Lisa was working late. But I got in deep with some people who don't take payment plans. And you thought my jewelry box was your salvation. I thought maybe, if I could just get through this one crisis. There's always one more crisis with men like you. I walked back to my jewelry box and closed the lid, cutting off the tinkling melody. Martha used to say the same thing about you. Just one more month, and Bobby will have our money back. Just one more quarter, and everything will be fine. Robert's face crumpled. I'm not the same person I was then. Aren't you? I studied his face, the handsome features Lisa had fallen for, now twisted with desperation. Because from where I'm standing, you look exactly the same. Different victims, same story. The sound of Lisa's car pulling into the driveway drifted through the window. Robert's head snapped up, panic flashing across his features. She's home early, he whispered. Yes, she is. I smoothed my blouse and checked my hair in the mirror. Now we come to the interesting part, Robert. What exactly are you going to tell my daughter? I need more time. Time's up. I heard Lisa's footsteps on the front stairs, her keys jingling as she approached the door. You have about 30 seconds to decide how this conversation goes. Because Lisa's going to walk through that door, and she's going to want to know why her husband looks like he's seen a ghost. Robert stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back like a caged animal. You can't just spring this on her. She needs to be prepared. The way the Weatherbys were prepared when their checks bounced. Mom, I'm home. Lisa's voice carried up the stairs, bright and cheerful. Mom, where are you? Robert looked at me with naked desperation. Please. And in that moment, despite everything, I felt a flicker of something that might have been pity. Not for Robert, he'd made his choices, but for my daughter, whose world was about to shatter. Up here, sweetheart. I called down the stairs, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling in my chest. Robert grabbed my arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. Margaret, please. I'm begging you. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up into his eyes. Let go of me, Robert. He released me immediately, backing away as if he'd been burned. Good. He was finally understanding the gravity of his situation. Mum, what are you doing up there? Lisa's voice was closer now, her heels clicking on the hardwood stairs. Just showing Robert some old photo albums. I lied smoothly, watching Robert's face crumble with relief and terror in equal measure. He was curious about the family history. Lisa appeared in my doorway, still wearing her navy business suit from the office, her dark hair pulled back in the efficient bun I'd taught her to make when she was 12. She looked between Robert and me with a slight frown, her lawyer's instincts picking up on the tension in the room. Photo albums. She glanced around, not seeing any albums. Robert, you said you were going to help Mom organize her closet while I was out. Robert's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. I could practically see the gears grinding in his head as he tried to construct a believable lie. We got distracted, I said, stepping smoothly into the silence. You know how it is when you start looking through old memories. Time just flies. Lisa's frown deepened. Are you feeling all right, Mom? You look a little pale. I'm fine, dear. I moved to my dresser and straightened a few items, including the jewelry box that had started this whole confrontation. Actually, I was just telling Robert about the Weatherbys. You remember Martha and George? They used to live over on Elm Street. Robert went rigid beside me. Lisa's face softened into a sad smile. Of course I remember them. They were like grandparents to me growing up. Such a tragedy how they died. She shook her head. I still can't believe someone stole all their money like that. What kind of person preys on elderly people? The irony was so sharp it could have cut glass. Robert made a sound somewhere between a cough and a whimper. Indeed, I said, my eyes never leaving Robert's face. What kind of person does such a thing? Lisa moved further into the room, kicking off her heels with a sigh of relief. Why were you talking about them? That was so long ago. Oh, you know how memories work when you get to be my age, I said lightly. Sometimes the past just comes rushing back when you least expect it. Faces you thought you'd forgotten suddenly become crystal clear. Robert was sweating now, actual beads of perspiration forming on his forehead despite the cool afternoon air. Robert, you really don't look well, Lisa said, moving toward him with concern. Maybe you're coming down with something. Yes. Maybe I am. He seized on the excuse gratefully. I should probably go home and rest. Nonsense, I said firmly. You should stay for dinner. I was just about to start cooking, and I made enough for 3. Besides, Lisa just got home from work. She shouldn't have to go right back out. The trapped look on Robert's face was almost comical. Lisa, bless her heart, completely missed the undercurrent of tension crackling through the room. That's sweet of you, Mom, but Robert really does look awful. Maybe we should take a rain check. Actually, I said, settling into my chair with the air of someone who had all the time in the world. I think Robert and I need to finish our conversation. Don't we, Robert? The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. Lisa looked from me to her husband, her lawyer's intuition finally kicking into high gear. What conversation? She asked slowly. Robert opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I could see him calculating, weighing his options, trying to find a way out that didn't exist. We were discussing family history, I said pleasantly. Robert was very interested in some old documents I've kept over the years. Police reports, newspaper clippings. That sort of thing. Lisa's eyebrows drew together. Police reports. Mom, what are you talking about? I reached over and picked up the manila envelope from where Robert had dropped it on my dresser. Lisa's eyes followed the movement, and I saw the exact moment she registered her husband's panicked expression. Lisa, Robert said suddenly, his voice hoarse. Maybe we should go home. Your mother seems tired, Anne. I'm not tired at all, I interrupted smoothly. In fact, I feel more awake than I have in months. Lisa, dear, did you know that your husband has a very interesting past? Mom. Lisa's voice carried a warning note. What's going on here? I looked at Robert, giving him one last chance to find his courage. To do the right thing for once in his miserable life. Would you like to tell her, Robert? Or shall I? His face had gone grey now, all the artificial charm drained away. Margaret, please. Not like this. Not like what? Lisa's voice was rising, her composure starting to crack. Will someone please tell me what's happening? I stood up and walked to Lisa, placing a gentle hand on her arm. Sweetheart, I need you to sit down. I don't want to sit down. I want to know why my husband looks like he's about to pass out and why you're talking about police reports. Her dark eyes, so much like her father's, flashed between Robert and me. Mom, you're scaring me. 15 years ago, I began, my voice gentle but unwavering. A man named Robert Henley stole nearly $500,000 from elderly clients who trusted him with their life savings. Martha and George Weatherby lost everything they had to this man. They died broken and penniless because of what he did to them. Lisa stared at me for a long moment, then let out a shaky laugh. What does that have to do with? She stopped mid-sentence, her gaze snapping to Robert's ashen face. Robert. He was shaking his head frantically. Lisa, I can explain. It's not what you think. Robert Henley, Lisa repeated slowly, her legal mind connecting dots I wished she didn't have to connect. Your maiden name was Henley. You changed it to Morrison when? She trailed off, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God. It was a long time ago, Robert said desperately. I was young, I made mistakes. But I've changed, Lisa. I'm not that person anymore. Lisa sank onto the edge of my bed, her face pale as porcelain. The Weatherbys. Mom's friends. You. She looked up at him with horror dawning in her eyes. You killed them. I didn't kill anyone. Robert protested. Their deaths had nothing to do with. They died of broken hearts, I said quietly. Martha had a massive coronary in the cereal aisle at Kroger when she realized she couldn't afford her heart medication anymore. George followed 6 weeks later. The doctors said it was a stroke, but I know better. He died of shame. Lisa was staring at her husband like she'd never seen him before. How long have you known? She asked me. I recognized him the first time you brought him home, but I couldn't place where I'd seen his face. It took me weeks to remember. When I did, I shrugged. I decided to wait and see what kind of man he really was. And Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. And this afternoon, he came into my room while he thought I was sleeping. He opened my jewelry box looking for my wedding ring. Lisa's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, disbelief, and finally, a terrible understanding. You were going to steal from my mother. No. Lisa, listen to me. Robert reached for her, but she jerked away from his touch like it burned. Don't. Her voice was sharp as broken glass. Don't touch me. Robert's hand fell to his side. I wasn't going to steal anything. I was desperate. I owe some people money, and I thought maybe. You thought maybe you'd rob my 75-year-old mother. Lisa stood up abruptly, her whole body trembling with rage. The same way you robbed the Weatherbys. The same way you probably robbed God knows how many other people. It's not the same thing, Robert said weakly. Isn't it? Lisa whirled on him, and I saw her father's fierce temper blazing in her eyes. You married me to get close to my family. To case our house. To figure out what was worth stealing. That's not true. Then why were you asking about Mom's safe? Why did that silver spoon go missing last month? Why have you been so interested in every piece of jewelry I've ever worn? Robert's mouth opened and closed, but no denials came. Because there were no denials to be made. Lisa turned to me, tears streaming down her cheeks. How long have you known? Really? I reached out and touched her face gently. I suspected something was wrong within a few weeks of meeting him. But I didn't remember where I'd seen him until about a month ago. I kept Martha's case file, you see. Every document, every photo. I used to take it out sometimes, when I missed her too much, and wonder what happened to the man who destroyed their lives. Why didn't you tell me immediately? Because I hoped I was wrong. I cupped her face in both hands. Because I knew it would break your heart, and because I wanted to give him a chance to prove he'd changed. To do the right thing. Lisa looked back at Robert, who was slumped against the wall like a deflated balloon. And instead he tried to rob you. He owes $80,000 to some very dangerous people, I said quietly. He thought my jewelry might be his salvation. Lisa laughed, but it was a harsh, bitter sound. 80,000. My God, Robert, I'm a lawyer. I make good money. If you'd just told me the truth, maybe we could have figured something out together. You don't understand, Robert said miserably. These aren't the kind of people who negotiate payment plans. They break legs first and ask questions later. So instead of trusting your wife, you decided to become a thief again. I never stopped being a thief, he admitted quietly, and the honesty of it hit Lisa like a physical blow. I just got better at hiding it. She staggered back, pressing her hand to her chest as if she couldn't breathe. What else? What else have you stolen? What else have you lied about? Robert was quiet for a long moment, staring at the floor. When he finally looked up, his eyes were hollow. Everything, Lisa. I've lied about everything. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Lisa stood frozen, her face cycling through emotions so quickly I couldn't track them all. Betrayal, rage, grief, disbelief. Finally, she settled on something that looked like cold, professional detachment. The lawyer in her taking over when the wife couldn't function. Everything, she repeated slowly. Your job. I was fired 3 months ago. Embezzlement. Lisa closed her eyes. Your family in Oregon. Don't exist. I'm from Detroit. Foster K. Your college degree. High school dropout. Each admission hit her like a slap. I wanted to comfort her, but I knew she needed to hear it all. Needed to understand exactly who she'd married. The investment portfolio you told me about. The one that was going to pay for our house. Robert's laugh was bitter. Gambling debts. All of it. Lisa opened her eyes and looked at him with something that might have been pity if it weren't so cold. And me? Did you ever love me, or was I just another mark? The question hung between them, and for the first time since this whole confrontation began, Robert seemed to struggle with his answer. He looked at Lisa, really looked at her, and I saw something crack in his facade. I did, he whispered. I do love you, Lisa. That's the hell of it. You're the first real thing that's ever happened to me, and I've destroyed it just like I destroy everything else. Love. Lisa tasted the word like it was rotten. You don't know what that word means. Maybe I don't, Robert admitted. But what I feel for you, it's the closest I've ever come. Lisa turned away from him, walking to my window to stare out at the garden. Her shoulders were rigid, her hands clenched at her sides. How much time do you have before these people come looking for their money? 2 weeks. Maybe 3 if I can convince them I'm working on it. And if you don't pay? Robert's silence was answer enough. Lisa turned back to face us, and I saw her father in her again. The man who'd built a successful construction business from nothing, who'd never backed down from a fight in his life. Get out. Lisa. Get out of this house. Get out of my life. Get out of this city. Her voice was steady as stone. I never want to see you again. Robert took a step toward her. Please, just let me explain. Explain what? Lisa's composure finally cracked, and the raw pain underneath came pouring out. Explain how you researched my family. How you found out about Mom's jewelry collection and my trust fund. How you probably knew exactly how much this house was worth before you ever asked me out. It wasn't like that at first. When did it become like that? She demanded. After the first date. The second. When did you decide I was worth the long con? Robert's face crumpled. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought maybe I could just marry you and disappear with whatever I could grab. A clean break. But then I got to know you, and your mother, and you realized we were human beings, not ATM machines. Lisa's voice dripped with venom. How inconvenient for you. I watched my daughter destroy her marriage with surgical precision, and my heart broke for her. But I was also proud. She was handling this with more strength than I'd had at her age. I'll make this easy for you, Robert, Lisa continued, pulling out her phone. You have 30 minutes to pack whatever belongs to you and get out of our apartment. I'm calling my friend Jake. He's a detective with Metro PD. He's going to escort you to make sure you don't take anything that isn't yours. Lisa, you can't just. I can and I am. I'm also filing for an annulment first thing Monday morning. Fraud invalidates a marriage contract. She started dialing. And Robert, if I ever see you again, if you ever contact me or my mother, I'll make sure Jake reopens the Weatherby case. I don't care if the statute of limitations has run out. I'll find a way to make your life hell. Robert looked at her with something like admiration mixed with terror. You really are your mother's daughter. Yes, I am. Lisa's smile was sharp as a blade. And that's the last mistake you'll ever make with this family. Robert turned to me then, his face a mask of defeat. Margaret, Save it, I said quietly. Just go, Robert. Go far away and try to become someone worth being. For your sake, not ours. He nodded slowly, then walked to my bedroom door. At the threshold, he paused without turning around. For what it's worth, Lisa, I really did love you. No, Lisa said firmly. You loved the idea of me. You loved what I could do for you. You never knew me at all. We listened to his footsteps retreating down the stairs, then the front door closing with a finality that echoed through the house. Lisa stayed by the window, watching as he walked to his car in the driveway below. Jake, it's Lisa Morrison. Yes, I know it's Sunday. I need a favor. While Lisa coordinated Robert's supervised removal from their apartment, I quietly moved to my closet and retrieved my real jewelry from the safe. The diamond wedding ring Harold had given me 4 to 7 years ago caught the afternoon light as I placed it back in the mahogany box where it belonged. Lisa finished her call and turned to find me closing the jewelry box lid. The melody of Fur Elise played its familiar tune, but somehow it sounded different now. Cleaner. Like the air after a thunderstorm. I'm sorry, Mom, she said softly. For what? For bringing him into our lives. For not seeing what you saw. For being so naive. I walked to her and pulled her into my arms, the way I used to when she was little and the world had hurt her feelings. You weren't naive, sweetheart. You were trusting. There's a difference. I should have listened to my instincts. Something always felt off about him, but I ignored it because I was tired of being alone. We all ignore red flags when we're lonely. I stroked her hair. But you handled this with more grace and strength than most people twice your age. Your father would be so proud. Lisa cried then, really cried, for the first time since this whole ordeal began. I held her while she mourned not just her marriage, but her trust, her faith in her own judgment, her belief that people were fundamentally good. What if he comes back? She asked when the tears finally stopped. He won't. I was certain of it. Men like Robert are cowards at heart. He'll take the easy way out, find some other lonely woman to charm, some other family to con. He won't risk facing us again. And his debts? I shrugged. Not our problem anymore. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the late afternoon sun slant through my bedroom windows. Finally, Lisa spoke up. I'm going to move back home for a while, if that's okay. Just until I get my feet under me again. This is your home, I said simply. It always has been. She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in hours. Maybe you're not as fragile as I thought you were. Maybe you're not as naive as you thought you were. 6 months later, Lisa's annulment was finalized. We never heard from Robert again, though Lisa's detective friend Jake told us that a man matching his description had been found beaten nearly to death in a Detroit alley 3 weeks after he left us. He survived, but apparently decided a new life in Mexico was preferable to dealing with his creditors in Michigan. Lisa moved into the guest bedroom permanently, and together we turned the house into something new. Not quite the family home it had been when Harold was alive, but not the lonely widow's refuge it had become either. It was something in between, something uniquely ours. I kept the manila envelope with the Weatherby case files in my jewelry box for another month before finally burning it in the fireplace. Justice had been served, perhaps not in the courtroom, but in the way that mattered most. Robert would never hurt another family the way he'd hurt the Weatherbys. Lisa made sure of that. On quiet Sunday afternoons, I still sit in my burgundy velvet chair by the window, sometimes with a book, sometimes just watching the world go by. But I'm never really alone anymore. Lisa works from home most days now, her laptop set up at the kitchen table where she can keep an eye on me. Not because I'm frail, but because we've both learned that family is precious and shouldn't be taken for granted. The jewelry box plays its tinkling melody when I open it each morning to choose which pieces to wear. But now when I hear for Elise, I don't think of the past or what I've lost. I think of how sometimes the most valuable things in life aren't the ones that can be stolen. They're the ones that grow stronger when tested. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very patient, they are the ones that come home.